started, and there we go. It started now. So I'll sort of start the meeting with my little welcome, and then I'll turn it over. So good evening, everybody. We're here tonight for the Citizen Committee to review council remuneration. We do have regrets.
Hold on, I can't hear you. 1 second.
I guess me saying anything doesn't matter, so I'll just take a break now.
I could hear you. So Laura, it might be on your end.
I think it might be Lindsay. So, and unfortunately, we don't have the chat, so I can't tell Laura anything, I guess, unless I held the sign up. So we'll just give it a second.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
There we go. I got you now. So
okay.
Something's gone wrong with my computer, but now I'm all good. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. So I'll just mention we do have regrets tonight from Jordan Morelli, and I believe Mary Jo Currier will be joining us, but I have not received formal regrets. For staff, you have myself, Derek O'Shea, the committee clerk, John Bolignone, the city clerk, is here, as well as Janet Janes, the deputy city clerk, and Ian Sullivan is our meeting host. And we do not have any members of public in attendance. Okay. And with that, Laura, whenever you're ready, I'll turn it over to you to start the meeting officially.
Sure. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so just got a little discombobulated here. 1 second. It's right over here. Okay, so we'll bring the meeting to order. I need someone to approve of the agenda. And I don't have my full screen. There's my full screen. Okay, go ahead. Approval of the agenda, please. John, go ahead, and Lindsay. And we all need to vote on the agenda. Okay, good. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, confirmation of minutes. The Citizen Review Committee minutes, January 19th. Need someone to confirm those. Lindsay and Indira. And we need to vote on them. Great. Perfect. Any disclosures of any pecuniary interests with anyone tonight? Nope. I don't see any. Nope. Okay, perfect. There's no delegations, as you just mentioned. Citizen Committee to review council remuneration, meeting number 4, Wednesday. Well, it's the 22nd today. Any briefings?
No briefings tonight.
No briefings. Okay, so let's just get right to business then. So, consideration of the review committee remuneration report. So, I guess we'll get right to the report. So, I thought it was very good. I thought it was very well written, and I was very pleased with it. And so I'm going to throw it out at the group. What did everyone else think? I saw some comments back, but who would like to start? Oh, Indira, I see your hand there. It's in the tree. Okay, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. Indira, you're on mute.
Thanks. I actually have a remote, and for some reason it's not working to unmute me. So I apologize. So I had sent 4 items, and great job, Lindsay. It was just really a really clear read. So these are really just editorial suggestions. The first one, I guess, is the more substantive. So wondering, I didn't see exactly how the survey questions or interviews were packaged up. So I was just asking, in my world, we have to be explicit in order to lift any commentary out of a explicit with regard to our intent when we're securing survey information in order to use it or publish it. So I just wanted to ask if that had been done.
Derek, did you, so we can take what was said and or submitted by the survey as long as there's no attribution. Is that correct? That's what I've sort of went with. I'm just making rules up as I go, though, as I do.
Oh, so I can provide a bit more context there. When we advised members of council that this was happening, we mentioned that the information would be used in the final report, but that there would be no attribution of specific information. So I think we've sufficiently anonymized the information that there should not be any concerns there. So that would be my response, Indira, to that, is that they were aware that the information would be used but not attributed. For some reason, Indira, we're not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not hearing anything from your end. You're not on mute, but I'm not hearing anything.
How's this?
That's better.
Okay. So I would leave it to those of you who are closer to the individuals to know if there's any, to your point, Derek, are the comments sufficiently anonymized? Because sometimes, you know, a comment can be attributed even though it's not quoted and the name isn't beside it. So I'm not sure if there's anything that jumps out at others that would say, well, everybody's going to know that it was this particular individual who made that comment. So and in the alternative, it would be to rather than to use the actual statements, to paraphrase them. So
what I could also offer to do is, if it's something we could do, is follow up with the interview respondents and just let them know. And then if there's people who do not want those included, then we can remove those. Just want to make sure, Lindsay, do we still have back end notes so we can know, or have they been sufficiently mixed up that we wouldn't be able to know who said what?
Well, I mean, I could certainly go back to the original, but I don't. So I did the individual files for each counselor and the mayor, and then what I submitted to the committee, it was removing that attribution, but there was a lot of, you could tell. I mean, I could tell who was speaking. So then I took it that much farther, and so if it was evident in what our committee was seeing, that, I teach high school all day. It's like, okay, well, there's one high school teacher on that, so you can figure it out. So I removed that reference completely. So it would be pretty hard. And I found that a lot of them, don't, like, they're very broad. And it's not specific. So I think we're okay. In my opinion, I think I cleaned it enough, cleansed it enough, so as not to, people will read that and go, oh, the mayor said that. I was like, no, I removed, I think, enough of that,
thanks,
but still
Lindsay.
keeping the context of what they wrote.
Appreciate it.
I feel confident in that, but it's up to the committee, obviously, to decide if it's just too much. So
I'm satisfied with that.
Does the committee reading the report identify any counselors or the mayor in the report? No?
I couldn't identify any, and when I read through it, I couldn't pinpoint anybody. So
Okay. Heather, could you? No. Okay.
I mean, I can't even remember who said most of these things, right? So talk about being a little immersed in the whole damn thing. So
How about you, Derek, since you have most contact with these counselors?
I might not be the best judge of it because I do work with the council members fairly frequently, but for my opinion, nothing leapt out that it would be attributable directly to a council member. So,
okay, that's good to know. Thanks. Yeah, Lindsay, you did a fabulous job. You really did a great job. It read so well, and a lot of things that we discussed in our meetings.
okay. No, I appreciate that. And I just, Indira, I sort of saved all of your comments from your email because I agree with what you said. I just didn't take a crack at, because the Contact Us, and ironically, I used the Contact Us portal today because of all of our meetings and learning all about Contact Us. And because I usually go right to the counselor. And so I use Contact Us, and then you get a receipt back by email, and then I replied to it with a picture and CC'd my counselor, right? Like, it was perfect. So I think it's, like, my first point was to go to a counselor, and I think that's what a lot of people do. So I think it might be a good idea to incorporate some type of comment on the need to educate the public more about their first point of contact, but I don't quite know where to put that.
Okay.
I think on that.
Go ahead, John.
That's an excellent point, Lindsay. That's something that we can work with our communications people with respect to that particular point. I think Contact Us has not been used to its full potential, and that's something that through our communications advisors, we're prepared to bring that forward to make sure that that becomes a better tool for the community and for council and staff to use, because not everybody's comfortable with some of the different things that are going forward. So we'll undertake to try to bring that forward to the staff in the position of authority there to get something done to that that's better.
And so does it need to be incorporated into the report?
No.
Because there is a reference to it. Councils are often first point of contact for constituents to solve problems despite the city's Contact Us portal. So that
we're aware of that, and I think that our people are trying to strengthen contacts. So whereas it could be included as part of the report, I was looking for where we would pop something like that in there. If somebody has a great idea, that's great, but irrespective of that, we're going to follow up with our communications people with respect to that.
Derek, you had your hand up?
Just to Lindsay's point there, I think it may be best included in that section of the observations part that you referenced, Lindsay, with the Contact Us. I believe it's on page 6, and perhaps it could be just a line ended at that second last paragraph about, I wasn't part of the interviews, but if it's relevant, you could say, a theme of the interviews was more need for education of residents on the Contact Us portal. So I think it's as simple as adding that one line there.
I would have no problem doing that.
I'm also flagging some notes while we do this too, Lindsay, so we can always, after the meeting, just make sure we've got the same notes for where to add stuff.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks. Go ahead, John.
And I apologize if I missed this in the report, but anywhere in the report, do we reference back to what our predecessors set the compensation level at from their for the council term of 2018 to whatever that was, 2022? I just wonder if it's relevant for the report for comparative purposes.
Good question.
I can confirm that is not in the report, but if the committee feels it would be beneficial, it is something the committee could add as a line in the compensation methodology section. And even perhaps provide something as simple as a link to the previous report as well, if people want more details, but a simple one-liner of it was set at this in 2018.
Yeah, I think a simple link to the other report would suffice as well, Derek. And if the reader wants to go back and read the full report by our predecessors, they have that at their fingertips.
I will make a note of that.
Okay, good idea. Any other comments regarding an overview of the report? No.
I know, sorry, that Indira had a couple of other ones in her email that.
Yes, that's true.
Just to put her on the spot.
No,
Sorry,
not at
Indira.
all. Not at
We
all.
did have some other-
I noticed Lindsay was going off mic and she had said she copied them over, so I thought she was going to. So the other two were, one was just with regard to the term remuneration, and then the final one was just a bit more. I guess I found it very shocking, some of the comments that were made around the mental health impacts, and was there a way that we could bolster that up to be a little more robust? So in relation to remuneration, and I thought, well, maybe it's just me, but I Googled it, and it would generally connote all monetary elements of compensation. So I think there's one of two things we could do. One is to change references of remuneration to be wages, because that's been the focus of our analysis, or we add a statement, and I provided some suggested language that in addition to the wage review, we considered other monetary compensation elements like pension, group benefits, parking, et cetera, and found them to be aligned to comparator municipalities. Therefore, we're not recommending any changes. So I think either approach could work. I feel as though the city staff, Derek and others, had done the work to gather that additional information. And I know for myself, I did look at it to say, okay, well, what's the approach here? You know, where, and I think it also provides a bit of context to our recommendation with regard to the premium pay for participation in the planning committee, because we were looking not just at core salary, but the total monetary package. So I'm afraid to go on mute in case I can't unmute myself, but I'll.
That's okay. That's fine. Go ahead, John. You're on mute.
Yep. So I just had it's on page 30, Exhibit B, where we talk about the compensation methodology. And towards the bottom, we list the average mayor ratio at 0.000265. When I looked at the Excel sheet, maybe there was an updated Excel sheet when we looked at all the documents, I saw the average mayor ratio at 0.00271. It's a very, very small difference, but I just didn't know where that difference came from. And then similarly, the average council member ratio at 0.000083, whereas in the Excel document we had, it ended in 8.4. And the median mayor ratio at ending in 2.42 seemed to be correct. I just wanted to make sure we got the right numbers in there in case anybody wanted to work backwards and try and figure it out if they were really keen.
Okay, go ahead, Derek.
I'll just quickly mention that it's very likely a transcription error and that I was dealing with a lot of numbers. So I'm going to make a note to go back and double check all of the numbers from the spreadsheet as they go into the report. But thank you for catching that, John. I looked at it several times, but still missed that.
Yeah. Any other comments on the methodology, the compensation methodology? Indira, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Oh, okay, Derek, go ahead.
Just to support Indira's point about I'll say the clarification about what was looked at with remuneration. Mm-hmm. It's difficult because we like to use the term corporately remuneration when sometimes the correct term is wage, as Indira says, versus remuneration can be all encompassing, but I still think it would be valuable to take the comment or the suggested text that Indira provided, saying that the committee did look at other aspects such as benefits, allowances for travel car, and that no change was determined or no change is being recommended, as that was done by the previous committee as well. And as the committee members will remember, I circulated the draft bylaw where it looks like we are changing things, but the bylaw is out of date. So we're actually just updating the bylaw to be reflective of current policy. So I think Indira's comments in there would be helpful for clarification.
I agree. That's a good idea. I'm glad we have that document too. That's good. Okay, so why don't we go back to the number that we've come up with, the number for the remuneration, and make sure everybody's on board with that. The $45,000 for the councillors and the amount for the mayor. I don't have it in front of me. Where is it?
129,000 for mayor.
Thank you.
And I saw John had his hand up there, Laura.
Go ahead, John. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so overall, I'm supportive of both numbers. I think, you know, I don't know, you probably can't come out in the report, but I'm certainly thankful for what the mayor does. And I'm certainly thankful for all that the councillors do as well. However, with that being said, we are recommending that the mayor's remuneration go up to 129,000. And council right now, we're saying 45,000, which again, I'm fine with, but it is higher than both the average and the median, I believe, of all the comparator data. So if I was a cynical person looking at it, I would say, well, why are you recommending more money when they're already paid more than all of the comparator data?
Good question.
Just because it won't work?
No, it won't work.
I
So-
thought that when we had discussed it, one of the considerations was that the comparator data was aged. So we were thinking that we're not going to establish a rate that we know is already out of date because our survey information was out of date. That was the way that I understood it.
And if that may be the case, Indira, but if that's the case, I would want us to put that somewhere in the report so that people don't just read the report in plain text as it is and say, well, why are they recommending more?
Yeah.
Let's say that we've got age data and we've built in the CPI piece or whatever the rationale was, just so that it's captured as well. Again, I support the amounts. I just want to make sure that we're covering it off.
I agree. We need that as well. And also it was because they didn't take a raise as well, I thought was one of the other reasons that we were looking at. Go ahead, Derek.
To that point, to back up some numbers, I do have the projected salary for projected wage for 2021 based on CPI, and it would be council at around $43,500 and the mayor at just under 127,000. So it's not an official number yet, but that's where it's projecting. So you're not seeing again that sort of grand leap. It's on the progression there. So unfortunately, those are numbers we can't necessarily share publicly because it's not public information yet, but that's the projected right now that we received. So
Okay.
And John, I would note that on the supplemental information, so I'm looking at page 16, so the mirror is probably before that, it cites that it's a 2020 rate. So, you know, if someone's actually looking at it in terms of interpreting, but I also understand that it may be helpful to actually call out that we've done an adjustment taking into consideration that the comparators were 2020 rates.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to add that additional context for it. I appreciate, yeah, it is listed there, but somebody might just scan through that and not think of it. So if we can put it in black and white and say,
Yeah.
you know.
I agree. I think we need to have that summarized in black and white. I agree with you, John, and that it's got to be crystal clear because we're going to be called on that, I'm sure, at council. Heather, you had your hand up.
Are we doing anything too with respect to sort of the cost of living too? Just looking at the comparators, other places, you know, tend to have, I would say, lower, certainly in housing costs, you know, and potentially even some cost of living factors. I don't know if that factors in there with the comparators at all, but I mean, the only one that's probably going to have higher costs in housing is maybe Guelph, where there's a, you know, we're not off that anyway. They are getting paid more. But the rest I'd say might have, in fact, lower cost of living than Kingston. So, you know, that's to me is also a factor of why we're still, yes, we're not at the median, but they're comparators in terms of size. I don't know that they're necessarily comparators in terms of the cost of living in those places. So just put that out there too. But, you know, with the recent that we have the highest, most expensive housing in Canada, it's sort of, you know, I think we need to have a little bit of perspective too of we're asking people, you know, to make a go of it on a pretty small amount of money. If that's, I mean, yes, they're all working other jobs, but they sort of have to because the remuneration certainly wouldn't be an affordable wage in this city. So just another comment. I don't know if there's anywhere to put that in, and it may be a bit controversial because we could have argument about a couple of the comparators, but it seems to me that those with higher costs are in fact paying more too. So it doesn't hit the median, but we look at it that way.
Go ahead, Indira. Thank you.
I would hesitate to be making a broad comment because I don't feel that we had any significant data to actually substantiate that as a conclusion. So it feels kind of anecdotal to me. And what I think, the methodology looking at the operating budget, I would think that I don't know, I'm thinking there's probably some correlation in terms of a city operating budget to overall cost of living, in terms of the work that needs to be done, et cetera. And maybe that's a bit of a shoehorn, I'm not sure. But to me, I would have, if we thought that ought to have been part of the compensation methodology, I think we would have, that would have taken us down a different rabbit hole of information gathering. And I think that the committee was comfortable in saying on the face that we agreed with, for a variety of characteristics, we agreed with the comparator list. So the comparator list is the comparator list. And I think we're better off to be sort of saying we've made this adjustment based on the data we had was 2 years old. Derek gave us some comparator, he extrapolated what the current would be if it was a 2021 rate. So I think that could be explained, although, I don't know, maybe we're not to the penny or to the $1,000, though I would imagine people would understand as rounding to even thousands.
Well, I certainly don't suggest we include it if it wasn't a consideration, but if you're looking for reasons why we're slightly above, that's one to me. But if we're not considering that, don't use it. I have no problem with that.
Could it be an add-in, just like a sub add-in, something that we just throw at the bottom? Other potential issues that could affect the situation, or are we stretching it?
Well, it sounds like you don't need to stretch it. You've got a reason for why you did it. So stick with your principled approach. If it wasn't a consideration in the initial, I think the comparators are still reasonable based on population, which is my understanding of why we chose them. But I wasn't here for all of the meetings. So, I also suspect that part of that is, not just size, but also similar standards of living. But there is clearly, some discrepancy, some difference there that, that's a holistic approach to the comparative data that, if you haven't used it and you think this is purely based on a calculation, then we live with the calculation. We rounded up. We didn't have the most recent data. If the committee is comfortable with that, that's fine with me. I wouldn't want to throw something in there that wasn't part of the consideration.
Okay, go ahead, John. Thank you, Heather.
I tend to agree. I think if we keep it to the data that we're just say that we're using the old or dated information from our comparator data, that certainly can back up why it's slightly more. But I do agree with you, Heather, that if we did do a deeper dive and had the time to do a deeper dive into some of those communities and found whatever statistic it is. I know one of our early meetings, we talked about the living wage for the various municipalities across Ontario, because the living wage for Kingston, or I don't know if they do it for KFL&A, but at least for Kingston, is based on all kinds of different calculations that they look at, from available housing to cost of housing, all that stuff. So, but we didn't go down that road anyways to do that type of analysis on the comparator data communities. And Laura, to your point, do we put a little note in there saying that we didn't do this, but then we go down the rabbit hole of do we list all the things that we didn't include, right? So I think it's justifiable with the age data that we're working with, and just stick to that.
I'm happy with that. I'm good. Okay, perfect. Everyone happy with that? Good. Yep. Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
I did just want to clarify one point, and I may call on John or Janet to help with the interpretation of this. But the first two recommendations, which are the ones of setting the remuneration values, I believe the way they're written now would imply that the remuneration in the first year for the new term of council would be that base amount plus the CPI adjustment. Now, the question to the committee is, is that the intention, is to have it 45,000 plus CPI, or is it to set it at that standard amount with the CPI to take effect the following year? Now, I'll let John and Janet correct me if I've misunderstood the interpretation of that, but I wanted to make sure the committee's comfortable, because that would actually make the amount potentially more than those amounts. And does the committee feel it's valuable to have that, factoring in inflation, considering the number is being determined in February and doesn't come into effect till October? So I just wanted to open up that avenue of conversation to make sure there's clarity. Hopefully I haven't muddied the waters even more.
I assumed it was going to kick in as of the 2023, like an increase annually based on the CPI. That could be wrong. That's how I understood it, but now that I read that, should we just change it to October 1st, 2023?
John, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, the way I read that, and if I was just a member of the public, it would be 45K plus. So that would be the first year, 45K plus whatever the amount is adjusted by the CPI. If that's what the committee is recommending, that's fine. But that's the way I would assume it reads.
Okay.
Can we just change that up to say $45,000 annually plus the consumer, so at $45,000 plus the consumer price index adjustment as annually adjusted as of October 1st, 2023, something along those lines? I know that that wording is, yeah, Derek's gonna
Go ahead, Derek.
go shush.
To say we can word things in whatever way the committee wants. So don't get hung up on the wording. I think it would just be the committee providing direction to myself that to structure the recommendation. Do you want CPI starting right away in October 2022 or October 2023? So if the committee determines that, I can make sure to structure it properly.
I thought it was 2023.
Let's take a vote. Do you want it to start right away? Vote yes. If you want it to start, okay, so raise your hand if you want it to start right away. Nobody's raising their hands. Okay, so you want it to start 2023, raise your hands.
Yes.
Okay, fine, then it starts
Thank
2023.
you.
So then we change it in the notes.
Yep, I will change the recommendations and then make sure there's an explanatory line in there that explains that.
Right, okay. Because they're already getting a raise and then it'll be raised the following year. Lindsay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are we done talking about that point?
Mhm.
Yep. Sorry, and going back to Indira's, I really enjoyed your email because it brought out really, really good points, but I wanted to just make sure this didn't get lost, was the last bit about the mental well-being of counselors as far as promoting knowledge and access to mental health supports available. And I went through the report trying to figure out where we could do that. And it seems to be like the last part, like conclusions, and that seems to be a push for, staff to look at changing the model of city council. So I don't want to get lost in that shuffle of the conclusions or sort of adding it as a byline. So I was thinking that on page 1 with the recommendations, that in that paragraph talking about members of council be provided with routine and relevant training opportunities related to, that we could also include in that line, in that sentence, mental health supports or something along those lines, so it would be incorporated into the training part of it, so the informing counselors and the mayor what supports are in place, because that seems to be such a big issue. I just thought that would sort of get to the point faster than just sort of adding it as a line into the report, but recognizing that the mental health supports is so important. What do you think, Indira? Is that what you were thinking?
I actually, there's on page 6, there's the final paragraph that talks about the online trolling, abusive behavior, and that tension that they're holding themselves appropriately to the code of conduct, but there isn't a similar code that the public is adhering to. That's actually, it was reading that triggered my thought that, is there more to say? So that paragraph ends with, this severely impacts the mental health of council members and affects their ability and willingness to serve. So you've got the flow in your head, but I think it could fit there. That's observations and recommendations, and then sort of going into, unless I haven't read it from the structural perspective, if you did observations and then you did recommendations, like you could certainly weave it together there, or just state it as an observation, but I think it has more strength as a recommendation. And then you're suggesting, did you say page 1? Because I feel like on my version, page 1 is the list of recommendations. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah,
Lindsay?
because I think it would have more weight as as part of a
Okay.
recommendation. I don't think it needs to be a separate one, but I think it needs to be, because there's a good chance that the recommendations will be read, but
Okay.
will anybody do a big dive into, or deep dive into the rest of the report? I hope they do, but
Yeah, so you're thinking, sorry, I wasn't finding it when you were reading it. So the recommendation that reads that beginning with the 2022-26 term, that they be provided with routine and relevant training opportunities related to. Okay, yeah.
And just adding in
Yeah.
social mental
Yeah.
health supports, like after.
Yeah. And so so maybe it's training opportunities on those and orientation on the wording that I provided, or something similar to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could fit there.
Okay, John, are you happy with that too? And Mary and Heather?
Yeah, I'd be a supporter of that.
Heather? Good. Thumbs up is good. Okay. I don't think they can retain everything they learn. Like, I remember when I started as a counselor, you couldn't retain everything in the first training sessions. It was so overwhelming. So I think ongoing training sessions is a great idea. Okay, any other comments, questions, suggestions, anything? Okay, so the general recommendations, the working space, we've got that settled, sorted. Any other questions, comments? Good, okay. Part-time, full-time, it's good. I like how that read. Everyone else good with that? Oh, Janet. Janet has her hand up. Go ahead, Janet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've just a couple of things that I just wanted to indicate for clarity. When I'm just taking just a quick review of the recommendations, and I think for the third one, we've indicated December 1st, 2022 for Planning Committee. But the inaugural, this term of council starts November 15th. So I think just to avoid any, there's nothing wrong with December 1st, 2022, because that is the first date that anybody on the new term of council will actually sit on a planning committee meeting. I think just for clarity to members of the public, I mean, it doesn't hurt to put November 15th in there too. And so just for the consistency of the dates, that all of those items would be effective November 15th, 2022, because that is the start date of the next term of council. So I would just make that suggestion. And the other suggestion I have, food for thought for the committee, is for the fourth recommendation, would the committee give any consideration to just in the fourth recommendation, removing the words beginning with the 2022-2026 term of council, but just that a dedicated administrative resource be provided to council members, because that would allow staff to start getting things in place and getting the hiring process undertaken and getting staff to fulfill those roles so that they are up and ready to go when the new term of council comes into effect. So they may actually sort of start during this term of council, but when the new term of council comes in, we have a fully functioning complement of staff for these councilors to start to work with.
Sure, if that wording would help you, that's completely fine. I agree. Everyone else agree? Okay, good. Sure.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Any other suggestions about any of the wording or from the clerks? No, don't see any hands. Okay, good. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Council to direct staff to access and provide appropriate access to meeting spaces. I think that's a great recommendation as well. It's crystal clear. Okay. Compensation. Any other thoughts, comments? I'm really happy with this report. I think it's very comprehensive and it's covered a lot and it's very clear. I think it's just we need to tidy up why we've done it so that if they have any questions at council, we can answer that quickly, clearly, and succinctly. So I'm happy with it. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? No? Derek, go ahead.
I think just if the committee has consensus, Laura, I would just say once we get to that point, let me know. And I don't know if the committee wants to hear about sort of the next steps and maybe determining if there's a need for another meeting after this, if people are comfortable sort of approving the report in principle with the discussed amendments. I would then obviously circulate to everybody, but I'm sure everybody here would like to avoid having to have another Zoom meeting. So maybe if I'll ask you as chair to lead the committee through a determination of that, and then we can do a final vote per se on the report in principle.
Okay, as the chair of this committee, I'm asking everyone today if they are comfortable and happy and ready to approve the recommendations and the report that we've worked on. Perfect. Now, I just would like to ask you, Derek,
That's a typo.
What's a typo?
I think somebody was accidentally off of mute there, so.
Okay, and Derek, I just wanted to ask you something about Jordan, and I'll get to you in a minute, John. Jordan gave his recommendation or gave his permission to go ahead as well. He was quite happy with the report, correct?
That's correct. Jordan did email me. He had a couple of questions for clarification, but he did ask that the committee proceed in his absence tonight. So just wanted to share with that everybody for the record.
Great. Okay, and John, go ahead.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. There is one paragraph that talks about the staff report by the end of Q2 2022 regarding requirements and costs for the conduction of a review. That's not going to be something that we're going to be able to get done in 3 months. I'm assuming that that's a typo and we should be looking at 2023 on that. And I just raise that to ensure that we're not actually going to try to do this in 3 months before the new term of council comes on board.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's a little
ambitious.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I read this report 3 or 4 times and it is an excellent report.
Yeah.
I missed that. And I was just looking at it now. I'm thinking, you're looking at probably the end of 2023 as opposed to, in 2 months. And leave that for the committee to just ponder that.
Which point? Sorry, I missed that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the council directs staff to provide a report no later than the end of Q2 2022, detailing the requirements, including potential costs of conducting a review of full-time versus part-time council members, positions, and adjusting ward boundaries to reflect fewer council members, budget limits, and the city's growing population. That is a very large project.
And I think, and Derek, you'll help me with this because you and I were back and forth on that, because my first one was we need to get this all done and approved before, so we can make it a referendum if that's the case of this election, but that's completely unrealistic. But this is basically staff to provide a report no later than that second quarter, detailing the requirements on how to move forward and whether they want to move forward. So it's like a preliminary step, asking this council to approve staff looking further into like how this would be done. That's
how I read it as well. I read it as though give us an idea of what the work would be and some sort of order of magnitude to actually support this investigation, that it was really developing a work plan or a project charter, something of that nature, as opposed to actually conducting the work. It was really tell us what would need to be done and how much it would cost us to do that review, so that then we can make a decision about doing that review.
Understood, clearly understood. However, as I said, it looks a little ambitious. We're starting to work on the election for 2022. Something like this, I think, is more relevant to the incoming council as it would be to the outgoing council. It really kind of puts the cart before the horse a little bit. And talking about it amongst some of our senior people today or in the last few minutes, I think that's really ambitious, and it's setting us up for trying to really move really quickly on this. And I'm not saying it's part of scope creep or anything like that, but I would envision this as something that would be next year's work as opposed to this particular term's work, in the sense that council would give us that direction based on the recommendation from this committee, but we would do a thorough review of what's required, so bring a recommendation forward, or at least information forward to the council that would be making that decision. So I was looking more at 2023, and I thought it was a typo. If it's not, that's fine. It's just it's ambitious for our team at this point, I believe.
Lindsay, go ahead.
I just fear that this, with a new council, they wouldn't need to, it's all overwhelming that first year, so it'll continue to be delayed. So this is why, we put in 2022, but again, this is not getting the report done, like a full report on how, if the city would move forward with that. It's just what is entailed with doing such a report. So then let council decide whether or not this term does it or the next term. But at least give us, what is involved with, hiring consultants, or is this a city staff thing, or what have you. It's just delaying things always concerns me, especially when a new council, because then they'll be going, why are we doing that? Anyway, that's just the discussion needs to be had this year. That's all I'm saying.
Being a former city councillor, I know these reports have to be done very carefully and they have to be very well thought out. So it does take time, and I do know the staff has a lot to do before the end of the year. So I don't think it is possible for them to do it. And also, once you plant the seed of this report, there's councillors that are going to vote against it, because why would they want to decrease the size of council? Because they're not going to want to lose their position. So I think you present it next year, and it gives everybody a lot more time to get their minds around it, to get their thoughts around it, and to work on it next year. And you plant the seed with the new council that this is coming, this is a possibility, and that they all have to work towards thinking about it, and that it could happen, and this could be something that they should look forward to. And it's all in the presentation. So it's all about working these people to think about it and to put it in the right light. But if we rush it, it could backfire, and it's just not, staff is so busy. They are so overwhelmed already, and throwing something like this at them, this is a huge project, huge. So that's just my 2 cents, being a former counselor, but I would say we wait. I don't think there's any rush. I don't think putting it out early would do any benefit. It wouldn't be of any benefit to us. But putting it in the report saying for next year would be a benefit, so that they know it's coming. Anyone else's thoughts?
I'm comfortable with that approach. I certainly defer to John's expertise as to what the staff have on their plates between now and the end of the year with the election coming up as well. So I'm fine with that being pushed to the next council's plate.
I'm so disagreeing with that, but I
know.
understand, John, exactly what you're saying, but I just fear that this will get lost in the shuffle with the brand new council. And so that is my big concern. And you look at the current council where they have, you know, what I'm seeing, or what I thought I saw, was like at least half these councillors are not running again. So what a way to position it where they don't have that as much of a vested interest in it because they're not running, right? And anyway, I don't think that while I do believe that it takes time for the report, and I understand that it's a lot of person hours and a lot of work going into it, this step, whether we reword this, I would like this council to at least approve staff or not going ahead and doing this report. So the preliminary report, this is what this recommendation reads in my mind, would be considered by this council, and then the full report with whatever staff, however staff proceeds, that would be dealt with and voted on by the next council.
Go ahead, John.
So Lindsay, that's exactly what would happen here. The recommendations would be presented on the 22nd. I believe they'll be approved enthusiastically. And then we will be undertaking all the implementation of the recommendations as soon as we can. So there will be a commitment from staff. There will be a direction from council, from this committee, to direct us to do that work that's contained within the recommendations. So it's not something that will get lost, but there will be a reported back. And I can guarantee you that will happen, because I'll be doing it, or our department will be doing it. So rest assured that recommendations that are presented here as approved by council will be followed through. This committee has done excellent work, and it's not going to be lost by some people that don't want to implement the council recommendations, because they will be implemented. But that's what our department does. We follow council direction. Council tells us to do the work, we do the work. It's that simple. So rest assured, it won't get lost, and it will be a comprehensive report outlining all the information for council then to make the next decision, whatever that may be.
Yeah, because once they approve the report, there's a record of it, and it goes to the clerk's office. And that
I get that, and I don't want staff at all to think that I am criticizing or predicting something that's going to happen that won't. I don't want it lost, and I'm not saying that staff is going to do that or this council or what have you. That's always sort of a fear. So, but I appreciate everything that staff does, and that you are under a tremendous amount of pressure with a workload like crazy. So I just don't want to come across as that person. So,
and you're not, don't fear that.
I wonder if we achieve the objective by actually just striking the reference to the date. So it reads that the council directs staff to provide a report detailing the requirements including costs of conducting a review. So then it's contemporaneous to this council, but it's not, then it's up to council and staff to negotiate timelines for it, but they could direct staff to do it, make that direction, adopt the recommendation, make that direction, and determine, practically speaking, what would work from a time deadline perspective.
John, what do you think of that?
I'm fine with that. Like, I mean, it's going to be done probably in 2023 because I don't want it to go any longer into the term. For me, I want council to get settled, and then I want to start doing these discussions, because if we can get them done in 23, at the end of the process, or at the end of it, it's a tremendous amount of work. I know, because we did the last ward boundary review in-house. And we're not going to do that in the future. We're going to go hire a consultant. All municipalities do. We had the luxury of having somebody in-house that was very helpful. This is an important endeavor, and I think we'll probably be doing something similar to what the city of Guelph did, I suspect. But we'll see. We'll come up with the costs, and council can make that decision.
Okay. All right. So everyone's good with it? Thumbs up? Lindsay, okay. Hey, we got Lindsay. Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So again, we are good with the report. We're going to go forward. We'll get the report written to us or sent to us, and then we'll just, I guess we just move on to presentation. Accounts, correct, Derek?
Correct. So the time frame right now is for the report to be presented at the March 22nd meeting. Traditionally, the committee has done a briefing as well, which is an opportunity to about a 10-minute presentation followed by questions and answers from members of council. So that's something else we can discuss offline, is who would wish to participate in that as well. So, but that would be the next step in the process.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you, everyone.
And I think what we should do to formalize everything once we're done discussion is a vote to approve the report in principle.
Okay.
So like a formal mover, seconder, and vote, just so we're all above board. That's the clerk and me coming out. Plus, also John's here, probably about to tell me to do that. So.
Okay.
You're a good man, Derek. You know exactly what I'm thinking.
Do I have to write the motion, or just I'd like to?
I don't think
I'll give you a pass on that.
It doesn't need to be written. It would essentially be approving the report in principle, incorporating the amendments discussed at tonight's meeting.
I'd like to approve the report in principle, approving the reports in principle. No, whatever, in principle. Thank you. You got that?
What he said.
I'm good with that.
Okay. I'd like someone to, yeah, thank you, John. And then I'd like everyone to vote. Thank you. Yes, Lindsay, come on, you got to vote. Okay, perfect. It's unanimous. Okay, it's all done.
And just to confirm, I do have Indira seconding that as well. I saw her hand go up for the seconder.
Thank you. John, did you want to say something?
Just in case Derek cuts out the meeting before I get a chance to say something, I did want to express my appreciation to this group for coming together on such an important task and completing it in such a professional manner. This diverse group really came together, and I'm pleased to see that. We've undertaken this process 3 times. This has been one of the smoothest processes that we have, and I think it's because of the skill and the expertise and the commitment that everybody made towards this project. So I'm really, really pleased, and we're grateful for all you guys. And once again, thank you much. It was an interesting experience, very enjoyable. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks. It was great. Yeah, you guys, you were an amazing group. Everyone had their own little niche and contributed very well to the group. And I thank you all. And your report, Lindsay, was amazing. And Indira, you contributed a lot of expertise. You all did. You all were very helpful and needed all of you to do this. So thank you very much. So I guess we just got to finish this. So motions, we've made our motion to approve the report. There's no notices of motions. Is there any other business? No, not that I know of, or yeah.
Sorry,
Oh,
just
sorry,
just
yeah,
one other
Lindsay?
thing. So
Yes.
so Derek, you said that this report will be circulated by email and then we just vote on it that way. So we don't have like I have it in my calendar that there's another meeting next week. So that's toast. Like we don't have any more meetings per se of this committee. We're done. I know.
That's correct. So there would be no sort of voting via email because that's technically not allowed under the Municipal Act. What we would do is, Lindsay, you and I think, should meet and make sure we've got the same notes for the changes, and then circulate to the committee just a final version of the report to make sure that we haven't missed anything. And then from there, so this is in effect the last meeting of the committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So there's no correspondence. Date of next meeting, we don't have one. So I need a motion to adjourn. Lindsay, and I don't think we vote to adjourn. Oh, Heather?
And technically, yes, we do need to vote, although if everybody leaves, the meeting just ends due to no quorum, so.
Okay, that's right. Heather?
Nope, that was it.
Oh, that was it. You were just voting to leave. Okay, all right. So we all vote to leave,
Right.
and thank you so much, everyone. And
Great working with everyone. Thank you very
was great.
much.
Yep.
And
Pleasure,
thanks to all the
everybody.
city staff.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you,
Thank you,
Derek and
everyone.
Janet.
Yeah.
And Derek
John.
and Janet and John and everyone else that helped behind the scenes. It was all great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time.
Pleasure working with all of you.
Yes, it was.
See ya.
Thank you.
Good one.
Bye.